Hello, third grade. I miss you all so much, and I've really been thinking about you this week, so I hope we're all doing well and staying healthy at home. So it's another Wednesday. It's time for us to read more Wonder. And this week, I'm extra excited to read because we are going to start a new part in our book. So we've noticed that instead of larger chapters like we've seen, our book is split up into like a little title, and then we have about 1 or 2 pages that we read, and then we get another title. So we've been reading part 1, if we remember, from earlier, and part 1 was titled August. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what these parts mean in the chapters when we get to it, though, because I don't want to ruin anything. So let's start back where we were. We are starting, and our title is Costume. For me, Halloween is the best part of any of the holidays in the world. It even beats out Christmas. I get to dress up in a costume. I get to wear a mask. I get to go around like every other kid with a mask, and nobody thinks I look weird. Nobody takes a second look. No one noticed me. No one knows me. I wish every day could be like Halloween. We could all wear masks all the time. Then we could walk around and get to know each other before we got to see what we look like under the masks. When I was little, I used to wear an astronaut helmet everywhere I went. To the playground, to the supermarket, to pick up Via from school. Even in the middle of summer, even though it was so hot in my face and I would sweat, I think I wore it for a couple years, but I had to stop wearing it when I had eye surgery. I was about 7, I think, and then we couldn't find a helmet after that. Mom looked everywhere for it. She figured that it had probably ended up in Grand's attic, and she kept meaning to look for it, but then I'd forgotten and gotten used to not wearing it. I have pictures of me in all my Halloween costumes. My first Halloween, I was a pumpkin. My second, I was a tiger. My third, I was Peter Pan. Dad dressed up as Captain Hook. My fourth, I was Captain Hook, and Dad dressed up as Peter Pan. My fifth, I was an astronaut. My sixth, I was Obi-Wan Kenobi. My 7th, I was a clone trooper. My 8th, I was Darth Vader. My 9th, I was the Bleeding Scream, the one that has fake blood oozing out of its skull mask. This year, I'm going to be Boba Fett. Not Boba Fett, the kid in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, but Boba Fett, the man from Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Mom searched everywhere for the costume but couldn't find one in my size. So she bought me a Jango Fett costume since Jango Fett was Boba's dad and wore the same armor, and then painted green armor on it. She did some other stuff too to make it look worn. Anyways, it looked totally real. Mom was so good at costumes. In homeroom, we all talked about what we were going to be for Halloween. Charlotte was going to be Hermione from Harry Potter. Jack was going as Wolfman. I heard that Julian was going as Jango Fett, which was a weird coincidence. I don't think he liked hearing that I was going as Boba Fett. On the morning of Halloween, Via had this big crying meltdown about something. Via's always been so calm and cool, but this year she's had a couple of those kinds of fits. Dad was late for work and was like, "Via, let's go, let's go." Usually Dad is super patient about things, but not when it comes to his being late for work. And his yelling stressed out Via even more, and she started crying louder. So Mom told Dad to take me to school and that she'd deal with Via. Then Mom kissed me goodbye quickly before I even put my costume on and disappeared into Via's room. "Augie, let's go," said Dad. "I have a meeting. I cannot be late for it." "I haven't put my costume on yet." "So put it on already. 15 minutes. I will be outside. You have to meet me there." I rushed into my room and started to put on my Boba Fett costume. But all of a sudden, I didn't feel like wearing it. I'm not sure why. Maybe because it had all these belts and it needed to be tightened and I need someone to help me put it on. Or maybe it was because it smelled a little like paint. All I knew was that it was a lot of work to put on a costume, and Dad was waiting and would get super impatient if I made him late. So at the last minute, I threw on the Bleeding Scream costume from last year. It was an easy costume, just a long black robe and a big white mask. I yelled goodbye from the door on my way out. Mom didn't even hear me. I thought you were going as Jango Fett, said Dad when I walked outside. Boba Fett. Whatever, said Dad. This is a better costume anyway. Yeah, it's cool, I answered. The Bleeding Scream. Walking through the halls that morning on my way to the lockers was, I have to say, absolutely awesome. Everything was different now. I was different. Where I usually walk with my head down, trying to avoid being seen, today I walked with my head up, looking around. I wanted to be seen. One kid wearing the same exact costume as mine, long white skull face, oozing fake red blood, high-fived me as we passed each other on the stairs. I have no idea who he was, and he had no idea who I was, and I wondered for a second if he would have done that if he knew who was under the mask. I was starting to think this was going to go down as one of the most awesome days in the history of my life, but then I go to homeroom. The first costume I saw as I walked inside the door was Darth Sidious. It had one of those rubber masks that are so realistic, with a big black hood over the head and a long black robe. I knew right away it was Julian, of course. He must have changed his costume at the last minute because he thought I was coming as Jango Fett. He was talking to two mummies who must have been Miles and Henry, and they were all kind of looking at me as I entered the door. I knew it wasn't a bleeding scream they were looking for, it was Boba Fett. I was going to go and sit at my usual desk, but for some reason, I don't know why, I found myself walking over to a desk near them, and I could hear them talking. One of the mummies was saying, "It really does look like him." "Like this part especially," answered Julian's voice. He put his finger on the cheeks and eyes of Darth Sidious's mask. "Actually," said the mummy, "what he really looks like is one of those shrunken heads. Have you seen those? He looks exactly like that." "I think he looks like an orc." "Oh, yeah. If I looked like that," said Julian, in that kind of voice where he's kind of laughing, "I swear to God I would put a hood over my face every day." "I've thought about this a lot," said the second mummy, sounding serious. "And I really think if I looked like him, I think I'd seriously kill myself." "You would not," answered Darth Sidious. "Yeah, for real," insisted the same mummy. "I can't imagine looking in the mirror every day and seeing myself like that. It would be too awful. And getting stared at all the time. Then why do you ask him to hang out so much?" asked Darth Sidious. "I don't know," answered the mummy. "Tishman asked me to hang out with him at the beginning of the year, and he must have told all the teachers to put us next to each other in all our other classes or something." The mummy shrugged. I knew the shrug, of course. I knew the voice. I knew I wanted to run out of the class right then and there. But I stood where I was and listened to Jackwell finish what he was saying. "I mean, the thing is, he always follows me around. What am I supposed to do?" "Just ditch him," said Julian. "I don't know," what Jack answered, because I walked out of class without anyone knowing I had been there. My face felt like it was on fire while I walked back down the stairs. I was sweating under my costume, and I started crying. I couldn't keep it from happening. The tears were so thick in my eyes I could barely see, but I couldn't wipe them through the mask as I walked. I was looking for a little tiny spot to disappear into. I wanted a hole I could fall inside of, a little black hole that would eat me up. Names. Rat Boy, Freak, Monster, Freddy Cougar, E.T., Gross Out, Lizard Face, Mutant. I know the names they all call me. I've been in enough playgrounds to know that kids can be mean. I know. I ended up in the second floor bathroom. No one was there because first period had started and everyone was in class. I locked the door to my stall and took off the mask and just started crying for I don't know how long. Then I went to the nurse's office and told her I had a stomachache, which was true because I feel like I had just gotten kicked in the gut. Nurse Molly called Mom and had let me lie down on the sofa next to her desk. 15 minutes later, Mom was at the door. "Sweetness," she said, coming over to hug me. "Hi," I mumbled. I didn't want her to ask anything till afterwards. "You have a stomach ache?" she asked, automatically putting her hand on my forehead to check my temperature. "He said he feels like he has to throw up," said Nurse Molly, looking down at me with very nice eyes. "And I have a headache," I whispered. "I wonder if it's something you ate," said Mom, looking at me worried. "There's a stomach bug going around," said Nurse Molly. "Oh, geez," said Mom, her eyebrows going up as she shook her head. She helped me to my feet. "Should I call a taxi, or are you okay walking home?" "I can walk." "What a brave kid," said Nurse Molly, patting me on the back as I walked towards the door. "If he starts throwing up or runs a temperature, you should call the doctor." "Absolutely," said Mom, shaking Nurse Molly's hand. "Thank you so much for taking care of him." "My pleasure," answered Nurse Molly, putting her hand under my chin and tilting my face. "You take care of yourself, okay?" I nodded and mumbled thank you. Mom and I hug-walked the whole way home. I didn't tell her anything about what had happened, and later, when she asked me if I had felt well enough to go trick-or-treating after school, I said no. This worried her, since she knew how much I loved trick-or-treating. I heard her say to Dad on the phone, "He doesn't even have the energy to go trick-or-treating." No fever at all." "Well, I will if he doesn't get better by tomorrow." "I know, poor thing." Imagine his missing Halloween. I got out of going to school the next day too, which was Friday, so I had a whole weekend to think about everything. I was pretty sure I would never go back to school again. So now we're on to part 2. And part 2 is titled Via. So what did we notice about part 1? We should have noticed that we were listening to the whole story from Augie's perspective. And we really got to hear inside his thoughts and what he was thinking and feeling. Because I know when I was listening, I could really empathize with what Augie was feeling. So now, part 2 is titled Via. So I'm predicting if part 1 was titled Augie and part 2 is titled Via, we're now going to hear the story from Via's point of view or perspective. A tour of the galaxy. August is the sun. Me and Mom and Dad are planets orbiting around the sun. The rest of our family and friends are asteroids and comets, floating around the planets orbiting the sun. I'm used to the way this universe works. I've never minded it because it's all I've ever known. I've always understood that August is special and has special needs. If I was playing too loudly and he was trying to take a nap, I knew I would have to play something else because he needed rest after some procedure or some other thing that had left him weak and in pain. If I wanted Mom and Dad to watch me play soccer, I knew that 9 out of 10 times they'd miss it because they were busy shuttling August to speech therapy or physical therapy or a new specialist or surgery. Mom and Dad would always say I was the most understanding little girl in the world. I don't know about that, just that I understood that there was no point in complaining. I've seen August after his surgeries. His little face bandaged up and swollen, his tiny body full of IVs and tubes to keep him alive. After you've seen someone else going through that, it feels kind of crazy to complain over not getting the toy you asked for or your mom missing your school play. I knew this even when I was 6 years old. No one told it to me, I just knew it. So I've gotten used to not complaining, and I've gotten used to not bothering Mom and Dad with the little stuff. I've gotten used to figuring things out on my own, how to put toys together, how to organize my life so I don't miss friends' birthday parties, how to stay on top of my schoolwork so I never fall behind in class. I've never asked for help with homework. Never needed reminding to finish a project or study for a test. If I was having trouble with a subject in school, I'd go home and study for it until I figured it out on my own. I've taught myself how to convert fractions into decimal points by going online. I've done every school project pretty much by myself. When mom or dad ask me how things are going in school, I've always said good, even when it hasn't been so good. My worst day, worst fall, worst headache, worst bruise, worst cramp, worst mean thing anyone could say has always been nothing compared to what August has gone through. This isn't me being noble, by the way. It's just the way I know it is. And this is the way it's been for me, for the little universe of us. But this year, there seems to be a shift in the cosmos. The galaxy is changing. Planets are falling out of alignment. Before August. I honestly don't remember life before August came into it. I look at pictures of me as a baby and I see mom and dad smiling so happily holding me. I can't believe how much younger they looked back then. Dad was this hipster dude and mom was this cute Brazilian fashionista. There's this one shot of me at my 3rd birthday. Dad's right behind me while mom's holding the cake with 3 lit candles. And in the back of us are Tata and Papa, Grands, Uncle Ben, Aunt Kate, and Uncle Poe. Everyone's looking at me and I'm looking at the cake. You can see in the picture how I was really the first child, first grandchild, first niece. I don't remember what that felt like, of course, but I can see it in plain as can be in pictures. I don't remember the day they brought August home from the hospital. I don't remember what I said or did or felt or when I saw him for the first time. Though everyone has a story about it. Apparently, I just looked at him for a long time without saying anything at all. And finally I said, "It doesn't look like Lily." That was the name of a doll Grants had given to me when mom was pregnant so I could practice being a big sister. It was one of those dolls that are incredibly lifelike that I had carried around everywhere for months, changing its diapers and feeding it. I'm told I even made a baby sling for it. The story goes that after my initial reaction to August, it only took a few minutes, according to Grants, or a few days, according to mom, before I was all over him. Kissing him, cuddling him, baby talk to him. After that, I never so much as touched or mentioned Lily ever again. Seeing August. I never used to see August the way other people saw him. I knew he didn't look exactly normal, but I really didn't understand why strangers seemed so shocked when they saw him, horrified, sickened, or even scared. There are so many words I can use to describe the looks on people's faces, and for a long time, I didn't get it. I'd just get mad. Mad when they'd stare, mad when they'd look away. Like, what the heck are you looking at? I'd say to people, even grown-ups. Then, when I was about 11, I went to stay with Grants in Montauk for 4 weeks while August was having this big jaw surgery. This was the longest I'd ever been away from home, and I have to say, it was amazing to suddenly feel free of all that stuff that made me so mad. No one stared at Grants and me when we went to town to buy groceries. No one pointed at us, no one even noticed us. Grants was one of those grandmothers who would do everything with their grandkids. She'd run into the ocean if I asked her to, even if she had nice clothes on. She would let me play with her makeup and didn't mind if I'd use it on my face to practice my face painting skills. She'd take me for ice cream, even if we hadn't eaten dinner yet. She'd draw chalk horses on the sidewalk in front of our house. One night, while we were walking back from town, I told her that I wished I could live here forever. I was so happy. I think it might have been the best time in my life. Coming home after 4 weeks felt very strange at first. I remembered vividly stepping into the door and seeing August running over to welcome me home. And for this tiny fraction of a moment, I saw him not the way I've always seen him, but the way other people saw him. It was only a flash, an instant while he was hugging me, so happy that I was home, but it surprised me because I'd never seen him like that before. And I'd never felt what I was feeling before either. A feeling I hated myself for having at the moment. But as he was kissing me with all his heart, all I could see was his drool coming down from his chin. And suddenly there I was, like all those people who would stare and look away, horrified, sickened, and scared. Thankfully, that only lasted for a second. The moment I heard August laugh, his raspy little laugh, it was over. Everything was back to the way it had been before. But it had opened a door for me, a little peephole. And on the other side of the peephole were two Augusts. The one I saw blindly, and the other one people saw. I think the only person in the world I could have told any of this to was Gran's, but I didn't. It was too hard to explain over the phone. I thought maybe when she came for Thanksgiving, I'd tell her what I felt, but just 2 months after I'd stayed with her in Montauk, my beautiful Gran's died. It was so completely out of the blue. Apparently, she had checked herself into the hospital because she had been feeling nauseous. Mom and I drove out to see her, but it was a 3-hour drive from where we lived, and by the time we got to the hospital, Gran's was gone. A heart attack. They just told us like that. It's so strange how one day you can be on this earth and the next day not. Where did she go? Will I really ever see her again, or is that just a fairy tale? You see movies and TV shows where people receive horrible news in hospitals. But for us, with all of our many trips to the hospital with August, there had always been good outcomes. What I remember the most from the day Gran died is Mom literally crumpling onto the floor, slowly heaving sobs, holding her stomach like someone had just punched her. I've never ever seen Mom like that. Never heard sounds like that come out of her. Even though all of August's surgeries, Mom always put on a brave face. On my last day in Montauk, Gran's and I had watched the sunset on the beach. We had taken a blanket to sit on, but it had gotten chilly, so we wrapped it around and cuddled and talked until there was not a sliver of sun left over the ocean. And then Gran's told me she had a secret to tell me. She loved me more than anyone else in the world. Even August? I had asked. She smiled and stroked my hair, like she was thinking about what to say. I love Augie very, very much, she said softly. I can still remember her Portuguese accent, the way she rolled her R's. But August has many angels looking out for him already, Via, and I want you to know that you have me to look out for you, okay? I want you to know that you are the number one for me. You are my. She looked out at the ocean and spread her hands out like she was trying to smooth out the waves. You are my everything. You understand me, Via? Tu es muy todo. I understood her, and I knew why she said it was a secret. Grandmothers aren't supposed to have favorites. Everyone knows that. But after she died, I held on to that secret and let it cover me like a blanket. August through the peephole. His eyes are about an inch below where they should be on his face, almost to halfway down his cheeks. They slanted downward at an extreme angle, almost like diagonal slits that someone cut into his face, and that left one noticeably lower than the right one. They bulge outwards because his eye cavities are too shallow to accommodate them. The top eyelids are always halfway closed, like he's on the verge of sleeping. The lower eyelids sag so much they almost look like a piece of invisible string that is pulling them downward. You can see the red part on the inside, like they're almost popping out. He doesn't have any eyebrows or eyelashes. His nose is disproportionately bigger than his face and kind of fleshy. His head is pinched in on one side where his ears should be, like someone used giant pliers and crushed the middle part of his face. He doesn't have cheekbones. There are deep creases running down both sides of his nose to his mouth, which gives him a wavy appearance. Sometimes people assume he's been burned in a fire. His features look like they've been melted, like the dripping on the side of a candle. Several surgeries to correct his lips have left a few scars around his mouth, but the most noticeable one being a jagged gash running from the middle of his upper lip to his nose. His upper teeth are small and splay out. He has a severe overbite and an extremely undersized jawbone. He has a very small chin. When he was little, before a piece of his hip bone was surgically implanted into his lower jaw, he really had no chin at all. His tongue would just hang out of his mouth with nothing underneath to block it. Thankfully, it's better now. He can eat at least. When he was younger, he had a feeding tube, and he can talk. And he's learned to keep his tongue inside his mouth, though that took him several years to master. He's also learned to control his drool that used to run down his neck. These are considered miracles. When he was a baby, the doctors did not think he would live. He can hear too. Most kids born with these types of birth defects have problems with their middle ears that prevent them from hearing. But so far, August can hear well enough through his tiny cauliflower-shaped ear. The doctors think eventually he will need hearing aids, though. August hates to hear this. He thinks that hearing aids will get noticed too much. I don't tell him that the hearing aids won't be the least of his problems, of course, because I'm sure he knows this. Then again, I'm not really sure what August knows or doesn't know. What he understands and what he doesn't understand. Does August see how other people see him, or has he gotten so good at pretending not to see it that it doesn't bother him? Or does it bother him? When he looks in the mirror, does he see Augie, Mom, and Dad, what we see? Or does he see the Augie everyone else sees? Or is there another August he sees? Someone in his dreams behind the mishap head and face. Sometimes when I look at Grans, I could see the pretty girl she used to be underneath the wrinkles. I could see the girl inside the old lady walk. Does August see himself as he might have looked without a single gene that caused this catastrophe on his face? I wish I could ask. I wish I could tell him and ask how he feels. He used to be easier to read before the surgeries. You knew that when his eyes squinted, he was happy. When his mouth went straight, he was being mischievous. When his cheeks trembled, he was about to cry. He looked better now, no doubt about that, but the signs we used to gauge his moods are all gone. There are new ones, of course. Mom and Dad can read every single one, but I have trouble keeping up, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to try. Why can't he just say what he's feeling to everyone else? He doesn't have a trach tube in his mouth anymore that keeps him from talking. His jaws are not wired shut. He's 10 years old. He can use words, but we circle around him like he's still the baby he used to be. We change plans, go to plan B, interrupt conversations, go back on our promises depending on his mood. That was fine when he was little, but I think he needs to grow up now. We need to let him, help him, make him grow up. Here's what I think. We've all spent so much time trying to make August think he's normal that he actually thinks he is normal. And the problem is, he's not.